Someday at Christmas, men won't be boys, playing with bombs like kids play with toys. One warm December, our hearts will see a world where men are free.
Welcome to another edition of the Mormon Expositor Podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Matthew Crowley. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Mormon Women Bear, a project where real Mormon women were and are photographed nude. No professional models, minimal makeup, no effort to have it be glamour shots. The galleries as well as the personal stories of the women photographed can be found at mormonwomenbear.com. And with us to discuss this project, we have with us its creator and photographer, Katrina Anderson. Katrina, welcome to Mormon Expositor.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
This is your first time here.
It is.
Well, we're really glad to have you. What else would you like folks to know about you?
Let's see. Well, I am a photographer, as mentioned. I live in Salt Lake City with my husband and our 5 children. I have 3 stepchildren and 2 that I birthed myself. I mostly stay at home with my kids, and then I work part-time as a photographer, and then I do this project. I've done some other personal projects in the past, which kind of keeps my creativity going. So yeah, that's me.
And you're not new to podcasts.
No, I've been around a few of them. Yeah, I've done FMH. I used to do Daughters of Mormonism, which is now no longer running, but I was on quite a few of those. And I don't even remember. I've probably done a few others.
Great. Well, we're really glad to have you. So also we have with us one of the subjects of this project, Brooke McClay. Brooke, welcome. We're glad to have you. What would you like for folks to know about you?
Let's see. I think that most of your listeners would probably know me from my podcast with Mormon Stories from a year and a half ago. I am a mom to 4 and recently divorced, and I work as a food photographer and a recipe developer when I'm not doing laundry.
So last but certainly not least, we have our very own Amy Blosh. And Amy, I'm afraid to ask, but what do you want folks to know today?
What do I want folks to know? Well, since, moving to Albuquerque, I have not been as regular on the podcast as I have been in the past or would like to be. So this is the first time I've been back since Young Women's Conference podcast that I hosted. So that's one thing, is that I'm really happy to be back. Second thing would be that while I have not been a part of Katrina's project, I have been in my younger days a nude figure model for James C. Christensen, who is a fairly well-known artist who is Mormon. His daughter I also have modeled for, Cassandra Christensen Barney.
I love her stuff.
I started working for Jim when Cassie's second daughter, Fiona, was maybe 4 months old, and she would bring her to BYU to paint. Jim was in his last year of tenure at BYU. He was publishing a new book. He came into the studio that I was working for, that I was modeling for, that produces his bronze sculptures, and they needed a model to do some figure work. And he came in to check on the progress of his bronzes and walked in, and I was standing there naked in a room full of, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 people, most of them, all of them Mormon, some of them Mormon bishops. And he and I just immediately struck up this very casual, lighthearted conversation while I'm standing there buck naked. And he asked if I would work for him at BYU because he was going to be on the East Coast promoting his book, and he needed someone that would be reliable and knew how to model. And so he used his Jim Christensen magic to get me on the staff at BYU. I was married, but definitely inactive, so I was not living in sin per se, but I wasn't necessarily temple recommend holder. And I worked for Jim for 2 semesters at BYU doing figure modeling, what they would call nude figure modeling, but it was like flesh-colored panties and stuff. And I've worked for, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, or 6 Provo-based artist for nude figure modeling as well. So I'm familiar with the artistic expression of figure modeling and nude modeling, and I have a real appreciation for artists that have an eye for it, and Katrina definitely has an eye for it. It's a beautiful website, it's a beautiful project, and I'm happy to be on the podcast.
Sheesh, you should have hosted this, not me.
Thanks, Amy.
All right, well, so let's dig into this a little bit. So, Katrina, looking around the website on the About the Project page, you mentioned that you drew inspiration for this project from the new, that's NU project created by Matt, and is it Blum or Bloom?
I think it's Bloom.
Matt Bloom.
But I don't know him personally, so I can't
say
definitively.
So can you tell people a little bit about that project, just sort of as a beginning point of reference for this?
Sure. So a couple years ago, I came across his project. He has spent the past few years photographing women nude, and these are not models. These are not idolized bodies. They're very normal, everyday women. He's done different series, but he's gone North America, South America. He's gone several places around the world. What stuck out to me is how normal they felt. He often photographed women in their own homes, in their own space, so that it felt very natural that they were sitting there without clothes on. Not sexualized, it was very real feeling. So his project is all about body positivity, and I loved that. I started thinking about how that could apply to Mormon women when last spring, summer 2012, there was just seemed like a bombardment of weird modesty stuff going on in church culture. There was, the BYU girl who had leggings on that got some kid who wrote her a note telling her that she wasn't following the honor code. There was the skinny jeans debacle up at BYU, Idaho. There was the car block painting that the Ensign editors added cap